Part 2 of last video. In my last video, I discussed how I give too much credit, and I give an example of this kid a shoal on a plane. Well, why that's important is while I'm writing this book, when I go back to this video, Zach, it's very important that you don't leave out that your father did not understand the asshole part. Because I do not know if my father really did realize that if he took a space in there and got rid of or added one letter, it spelled asshole. That there was a translation in there. So I use this a lot of time in my stand-up because it really happened in real life. But I don't tell them about the added letter. I leave out the added letter and I let the audience think that my father was in on it. But in reality, I do not believe my father knew about that. If you if you put a space in the kid's name, it looked like asshole. I don't think my father realized that. Because there was a letter in the way and you would need to do a space. And he was just seeing me come up with a friend's phone number from another country in an airport. That was not his concern. He's on a busy plane. So he's really not in on it. But when I do my stand-up, I say, "Man, names are getting weird today." Yeah. You think you got a bad name? You think Henrietta's a bad name? I got one for you. I was at an airport one time when I was a child. I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh with another kid from another country, a Middle Eastern kid, barely spoke English. Going to visit somebody, we play Yu-Gi-Oh and the kid likes me, so he gives me his phone number and his name. I bring this to my father. He laughs, hands me the piece of paper. I ask, "What's wrong with the piece of paper?" He goes, "Look at it again." And I read it. It says ASSHOLE. And I go, "What's wrong with that?" And then I think to myself, "Oh, wait a minute. If you put a space in there, a shoal, what's wrong with a shoal?" Oh, with a space, it's asshole. That's how the stand-up goes. But the real reality of the real life situation is that, yes, the kid had a funny name. Yes, you had to put a space in it and it made asshole. But you also had to remove one letter or add one letter. Also, I don't believe my father was in on it. When I tell that joke, it sounds like my father realized it first and showed me. But in reality, my father just giggled, looked at the number, looked at the name, handed it back, and then I went to look at the piece of paper to try to figure out what he giggled at. And that's when I realized that if you put a space in and remove a letter, then it makes that word. But my father never discussed it with me. I never brought it up to my father. At the time, things weren't really going so well. We're in an airport. So it just slipped my mind. And what's even worse is I lost the phone number. So by the time we got home, the luggage where the phone number was, I couldn't find it no more. I didn't know where the luggage was, and that happened a lot. Any scrap piece of paper that was ripped didn't stay in my house very long, because I would be put into a program, and during the week my mother would throw away stuff. Throw away my direction books to my remotes. She even threw away a solid gold, well, not real gold, solid fake gold Pokemon card when I was living in Westwood and a child because I liked it too much. I really liked this one toy. It was a Pokeball with a solid gold Charmander, and I just liked it a lot. So while I was at school, my mother threw it in the trash and said, "Too bad." She said I didn't clean my room hard enough, so she threw away my stuff. This is after she also took away my swimming medal that I won in the orphanage because she wanted to dwell on fantasies, because she didn't want me to have any accomplishments. This was after she gave me an overdose because she didn't want to watch Batman Mr. Freeze. This is after she gave me a full bottle of Epicac as a punishment because I ate a mushroom and said something she didn't like to hear. I repeated something another adult said to me. So, yes, my mother threw away, most likely, that phone number and that name. But I also lost it moving around from airport to hotel to airport to hotel, jacket, airport, hotel, move around. I'm not feeling too good. Also, my mother gave me an opiate on one of these plane rides too, so that kind of slowed me down. I wanted a Tylenol or something, and I got a pink opiate. I know this because I looked it up later. She wouldn't tell me what she gave me, so I ended up looking it up. It was an opiate, absolutely. I ended up having to get high off them later when I was about 17. She had a bunch of old bottles of them in her closet. I mean, like 3 old prescriptions, all emptied, and she's taken them. And some of them without her name on it. It's ridiculous. Like, for instance, she once took my Vicodin. After I got back from the emergency room and my headaches cleared up a little bit, she took my pill bottles to her closet and started popping them. My own Vicodin. So, yes, keep that in mind when I discuss some of these ailments, like my neurological disorder. Like when I went to shave and sit in this bathroom, I took one of these. What are these? I want to block out some of the information, like my name or. That's a generic for Triliptal. That's for epilepsy. It helps with seizures, shakes, and it works great. Now, I wouldn't be surprised, though, if my mother and father try to fuck that up and get it taken away. They like me suffering. They really do. Like, for instance, I told them that I really am in pain and I'm really suffering. And they called my doctors and told them to stop helping me. They tried to make this sound like a fantasy and like it's all some mental illness. And then they said they were calling their attorneys. Yep, that's how they help me. Yeah, great help, huh? 25 years. Been begging for help for 25 years. And the only neurologist I've seen is the one I've saw. And then they call and tell them to stop seeing me, basically, in other words. I'm paraphrasing, but they basically say, I'm a mental patient, I'm making this up, and you're wasting your time. Why drive all the way from Boston up to New Hampshire? I know Zach convinced you to come all the way up there. I know he really needs help, but we don't believe him, and you shouldn't either, so stop seeing him. And they don't say those exact words, but I give the phone number of my neurologist to my father, and then, shortly later, the neurologist won't see me anymore. I give the phone number of my father to my DHHS worker who's working with my Social Security and trying to get me cash benefits, and then all of a sudden she won't answer the phone anymore. She doesn't take my phone calls right after she speaks to my father. This always happens. My primary care. I see my primary care. I give the phone number of my primary care or my GI. And once again, my father, my mother, and his new wife call and say it's all some fantasy, don't help him. So I can't get anywhere. I can't get any illnesses established. Meanwhile, I got pictures of my testicles filled with blood. I got pictures of the injuries from my seizures. I got head injuries. I got scars all over my body. And I got hundreds of witnesses going back 25 years who have seen my injuries. But I can't do anything about it because I can't drive, I can't walk, and I'm stuck in a moldy apartment. And my father's doing everything in his power to make sure I die in the woods right after this moldy apartment. So I'm going from this moldy apartment to the woods to live in 0-degree weather. And there's no shelter available that will take a man who's going to have seizures without it documented why he's having them, who's not going to be able to move his legs or talk once in a while, but has no documentation of why that's going on, and might fall here and there or might need canes or wheelchairs here and there, but has no documentation of why he needs these things. They're not going to put up with that. Nobody will. And that's because my father has set me up to die. So has my mother, and his new wife is happy about it. She wants the money. She wants my father's money, and if this is real, then she might have to handle this before she can continue using my father's money. Because ever since my mother died, she's jumped right in the bed with him, spending all of his money, and now she got me out of the picture. Now it's just her and him and the vacationing, and her child and her granddaughter. Fuck my father's grandkids and her kids, right? Fuck all of us. No, I've worked to try to reconnect the family, and I bet it worked. Not only that, I'm hoping that by my father's death they reconnect, but how about me? How about somebody who gave his life for your second wife? How about somebody that was OD'd by your feet that could have been brought to an emergency room, but instead you let me fucking die by your feet because your wife didn't want to watch Batman and slip some pills to me. What the fuck? That's okay. That's okay for me to live with, right? And that requires nothing. I don't require my inheritance. I don't require my social security that you stole. I don't require continuing to receive my social security. I don't require my housing that I got thrown out of. I don't require any medical care. None of that. I should just go to the woods and die. And if I try to work, that will never work either. Anybody with my amount of disabilities cannot work. That's the system. Those are the rules. I didn't make them. That's just how it is. If I try to apply for a nice, decent job, making $20 an hour, and I can't lift, or I can't move, or I can't get there, or I can't because it's too far away, or because I can't drive, or because I had a seizure on the way, or because I fell at work in a hospital, ambulance took me out of there, they're not going to put up with that shit. And neither would I. If I was running a company, I wouldn't want my workers bleeding on the floor once a month. I wouldn't want them seizing. I wouldn't want their lives at risk just to make minimum wage. No boss or owner would want that. And that is why working is out of the question for me until we get a diagnosis. But I love working, so we are going back to work. Even if it kills me, I'm going back to work. But first, we're working with doctors and we're working with Social Security. Until those are complete, even if it kills me, we are not going to do that again. We are not going to hurt myself trying to make some money. We're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to try to make some money even if it hurts. We're only going to make money if it's safe. And seeing as it's not safe for me to make money, I'll have to wait. But I love it. I love having money in my pocket. I love being in control of a business. I love seeing the public. I love having people that care about me because my customers care about me more than my own father, my own family. I'm not kidding. When I'm bleeding on the ground, if I call one of my customers, they'll be more willing to pick me up at an emergency room or get me to an emergency room than my own mother and father, or I should say my stepmother and father. If one of my customers is 3 hours away in another state, they'll come and get me to the emergency room sooner than my father 15 minutes away. Yes, my father will be 15 minutes away with his son bleeding on the ground, needing some help from him. Maybe getting home on a Sunday from the emergency room because it's dangerous for him to walk in the cold home, all because he had a seizure because he tried to walk before. I tried to walk to work on Saturday, had a seizure, fell. Okay, I tried to work on Sunday and went outside, had a seizure, got brought to the emergency room. Now they're releasing me. There's no transportation, no buses, no taxis. How do I get home? Do I sit outside in the freezing cold and try to walk home and have another seizure? Then an ambulance picks me up and brings me back to that same hospital. Then they release me. Then I try to walk home. Then I have another seizure and then it brings me back to the emergency room. Is that a good idea? No. I call everybody and try to get home. And I'm more likely to get a customer hours away than to get my own family 15 minutes away who's sitting on a beach or drinking a martini or out to eat or with a church friend or with a neighbor or with some friend. I'm more likely to get a customer to help me. And that's always been the case. I'm more likely to get a teacher to help me. I'm more likely to get a program staff to help me. I'm more likely to have program staff bring me clothing shopping. But see, my father controlled my money. My mother controlled my health care. So, things went very downhill for me when it came to money or health care. Because I couldn't get help from teachers or staff members when it came to those two things. It was up to my mother with the pills, with the druggings, with the health care, with trying to get me doctors. My mother was always responsible for those things. And my father was always responsible for the money. And that's just how it went.